Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Please chant. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I was sitting in the office and I heard female voice saying that she had come for the Bhagavad Gita verse learning class. Who is that said that? Maybe she left. Yes, yourself. I see. You were learning Sanskrit verses regularly. I see. I see. And you were learning verses, or this is the first time you were coming for that? I see. All right. Was anyone else regularly coming to that Bhagavad Gita verse learning session? Gary? You don't want me to put you on the spot and ask you to recite some verses. Okay. You went once. You learned the whole Bhagavad Gita in one session? No, not very likely. One symptom of Kali Yuga is, in Srimad Bhagavatam there's a list. One of the things is that day by day memory decreases also. So there are many people previously who are Shrutidhar. That means, Shruti means, have you heard that word? Yeah, if you're learning Sanskrit at the Department of Philosophy, Shruti is one of the very important words. It means that which is heard, and it particularly refers to the Vedas. But the Shrutidhar in this context means hear and hold. It means you hear it and you remember it. So there are many such people. Srila Prabhupada, our guru, he mentioned one anecdote. During the British period in India, there was one Brahmin who was called as a witness in a court case. Remember hearing this story? So, one Englishman was accused of beating an Indian man with no reason. So the Brahmin was called and he was asked in his own language, whatever that may have been, probably in Allahabad, Prabhupada lived in, probably Hindi. That's the language. Are you speaking any other language there? Bhojpuri? No, I don't think so. That's in Varanasi. So, as he was asked, well, what did the Englishman say? What transpired? And he said, well, I don't know the language, but this is what he said. And he said it all. You rascal, get out of here, whatever the man may have said. So that was given as an example of, even up to a recent time, people had such a good memory that they could just hear and remember without even knowing without knowing the language. So that's exceptional. Nowadays, dull memories for various reasons, dull-headed in various ways. Anyway, it's interesting that you're studying Sanskrit at the philosophy department because Sanskrit's a language, right? And language and philosophy, it's not the same that you'd think it'd be in the linguistics department. I suppose they connect Sanskrit with philosophy, and that's a good connection. Although it's not only philosophy that's written in Sanskrit. It's a conversational language. Despite propaganda that Sanskrit's a dead language, it's by no means dead. There's still at least some people, a few 100,000 people, which in India isn't so many. In Ireland that would be a lot of people, but in India it's not so many. It seems they have 1.3 billion population. Oh, one more at every moment. So a few 100,000 people speak that. It's a conversational language still. It never was a dead language. So You're learning verses of the Bhagavad Gita, so that's very nice. But it's not the language that matters so much as the message. Of course, if we understand Sanskrit, that can help us to enter the subtleties of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. But that can be communicated in any language. It's falling down. I'm going to put it up a bit. Okay. The best position is like this, and then you get the sound without blocking the vision. So what is the message of Bhagavad Gita? Someone can learn all the verses of Bhagavad Gita and not enter into the spirit of it. Bhagavad Gita is not just some philosophy in the sense that there are so many philosophies. There are so many armchair philosophers. But Bhagavad Gita is a call to action, literally. It's literally a call to action, because Krishna, who spoke the Bhagavad Gita, was speaking to Arjuna, who didn't want to act. He wanted to, battle was about to take place, and Arjuna was supposed to be the chief fighter on one side, and Arjuna said, hey, I don't want to fight. And Krishna convinced him to fight, to perform action. That was the specific action that Arjuna was supposed to perform, but it serves as what would you call that? A simile for everyone to act in the world, to not neglect their duty, but at the same time to understand what is their highest duty. And what that is the discussion of Bhagavad Gita. So there are many things to learn from Bhagavad Gita. In 700 verses, many topics are discussed. The first thing to understand, and you can understand it in any language, in Sanskrit, one word is the dukhalayam. It means this material world is full of suffering. It's a place of suffering. Just like you know the word Himalaya, which in English is pronounced Himalaya, but in Indian languages it's pronounced Himalaya. So him means ice, and alai means place of. There's a place of ice, icy place, despite global warming and the melting of the glaciers, but it's still pretty cold. So dukhalayam, duk, that's a very important word in Sanskrit. In any language, it means suffering, distress. So this material world is a place of misery. That's the first thing, that's the beginning of Vedanta philosophy. To understand that this material world is a place of suffering, and as Krishna elaborates in Bhagavad Gita, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Doshanu Darshana. One of the main factors of knowledge is to see, to always see that this world is full of the sufferings of birth, death, old age and disease. So that can be communicated in any language, whether you say mrityu or death or any other language, you can say it in. But whatever language you say it in, death is a factor of suffering. Of course, some people may think death is welcome. Some people commit suicide. For some people, death is welcome. Marie Antoinette, sorry if I can't pronounce it properly, when she was sent to the guillotine, she was told, hold yourself together. She said, but she says, for me this is welcome. For me the guillotine is, I welcome it. Because she'd been through so much distress prior to that. But death is only welcome if we're suffering so much that we think death will be a relief. So the point is it's suffering. It's a lesser suffering may seem to be some relief, to be happiness. But it's not actually happiness. So the beginning of, it's not really spiritual knowledge, but it gives us an entry into spiritual knowledge, is to understand that this material world is a place of suffering. That's a very significant point to understand, is it not? Seeing as everything we do to get happiness. Is it not? Everything. Of course, we may do something out of a sense of duty. You know that word? Everyone knows that word duty means? Or still in the English language? Didn't become an archaic word yet. We may do something out of a sense of duty. Probably in the next generation. If it comes in a book, they'll have to footnote it and try and explain what it means. So we may do things out of a sense of duty, but even that, if we go back through our psychological processes, it's because we're looking for happiness or we want to share happiness with others. And there are some people who are psychopathic, increasing number of people. Unfortunately, they seem to become the heads of state of major countries, who seem to take pleasure in making people unhappy. They take pleasure in that. There's a term in Sanskrit for that. Paradukha dukhi. Paradukha sukhi. They take pleasure in others' distress. So there is also some kind of pleasure in that. Some perverse kind of pleasure. But everyone is looking for happiness. Everyone wants happiness. But if we consider, we will see that this material world is full of distress. Simply full of distress, which we cannot avoid. And even if somehow we get in some situation in which we find that, well, everything seems very nice. I got a nice place in the sun on a Caribbean island, and enough money to live, and nice people, but dukhalayam, and the next word in Bhagavad Gita is, anyone? Ashashvatam. Means that everything in this world is temporary. So even if we do somehow or other we're able to get some situation which we think is very pleasant, we can't remain in it. So that is the nature of the material world. And our nature is that we're always seeking happiness. So Bhagavad Gita points out, first of all, that we are suffering. And most people don't even realize that, or the extent to which we are suffering, or they live in hope of attaining happiness. Or they get quick shots of happiness through intoxication, or sex, or they pin their hopes of happiness on something such as the Dubs. What is the Dubs? I'm seeing everywhere. Some sports team. What is it? Gaelic football? Or is it? I guessed it was Gaelic football. So if the Dubs win, the Dubliners become happy. But then whoever they beat, their followers become unhappy. And they won't always win. And even if the Dubs win every game, then it would be boring anyway. And is it a league, is it? They have a Gaelic football league. Everyone should know. You know all about this, huh? You're nodding. Yeah, you've come from India maybe, and you know all about the local Gaelic football scene. Become a first-class Irishman. Well, yeah, even if your football team wins all the games, well, still you have to suffer death, disease, old age. So these are facts which mostly people, they don't want to even think about. And many times when I point this out, people say, don't say that. Don't talk about that. Death, okay, we have to die, but it's natural. It's natural, maybe, but you don't want it. So Krishna points out in Bhagavad Gita that actually for the soul it is not natural to die. If it's so natural that we die, then why don't we want it? Is nature so bad? This material nature is bad in that sense. But Gita points us to our higher nature. Why is there suffering in this world? That's an important question, isn't it? Who's asking that question? I got the answer when I was about 6 years old. What was the answer? A long time ago, someone ate an apple. That's the answer. As I grew up a little bit, I didn't find it very satisfying. In Gita, I'm going on with Gita as you came for the Gita verses course. I'm citing some verses in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna who's the speaker of Bhagavad Gita, says that Purusha Sukha Dukhanam Bhuktridve Hetu Ruchyate. You heard that word dukkha again. So all these words are very important. Actually learning the Sanskrit is very helpful. Well, it can be communicated in any language. So Purusha means person. It can mean person, it can specifically mean a male person, and it can mean a person who has the tendency to enjoy, or an enjoyer. So Purusha Sukha Dukkha, you heard the word dukkha means distress, and Sukha, you often hear these words said together, Sukh Dukh. Sukh means happiness. So Purusha Sukha Dukkhanam, that gives plural. Bhuktridve Hetu Ruchyate. Actually all these words, they all appear again and again. There are not that many words used in Gita. It's the same words you'll find again and again, but form different sentences to give different understandings. So, Bhuktridve means one who enjoys or suffers or experiences. Hetu, cause, uchyate, is said to be. So, the cause of our happiness and distress in this world is us. We are the cause of our own happiness and distress. Don't blame it on Adam or Satan. Yeah. We ourselves cause our happiness and distress. So if we do some good activity, it's very difficult to find what good activity one could do in the modern world, because the whole world is running on a template of impiety. So even if you try to do good, it's difficult to do good. But there are pious activities by which we, in this life or in a next life, we will get good reaction for. And if we do sinful activities, we get a bad reaction. So this explains why someone is born with a silver spoon in their mouth and someone else, as the Who said, is born with a plastic spoon in their mouth. I was born with a plastic spoon in my mouth. I hope I die before I get old. Well, he's old. They're all old now. They didn't die. They're enjoying the results of their youthful songs. So, someone is born rich, someone is born poor, someone is born with a healthy, physically attractive body. Someone else is born with an ugly, deformed body. You're not supposed to say words like spastic, but Some people are born like that. So then they changed it to physically handicapped, and then it's physically challenged, and now it's differently abled or something. They're always making new euphemistic terms. So, some people are born with good intelligence. Others are born more stupid than others. Low intelligence. Why is that? That's due to previous pious and sinful activities. But even if someone is born in a prestigious family, in a prestigious nation, with plenty of money, good intelligence, good looks, still they have to suffer birth, death, old age and disease. So, as I said, this is not spiritual knowledge per se, but this perceiving this should be the impetus for us to consider actually what's going on. How can we get out of all this? How do we get to a situation where we don't have to suffer? So that's the beginning of spiritual life. Atato Brahma Jignasa. The first in Vedanta Sutra. The first statement is, now we should inquire into the nature of spiritual reality. Why are we suffering? What are the causes of suffering? We ourselves are the cause. We create our own activities. We create our own suffering and distress, but this mature world is of the nature of suffering. But we are, as spiritual beings, we are spiritual beings. The body is temporary. We get body after body after body. Sometimes we are born in a rich family, sometimes in a poor family, sometimes in the higher spheres, higher planetary systems where there is less suffering, much opportunity for happiness. You don't have to work for a living. You don't have to put on the central heating to get warm. The temperature's nice, like a big Hawaii before the white man came. Even on this planet, some places are more conducive to happiness than others. That's why people are immigrating to Ireland. And that's also why people are emigrating from Ireland. Both ways. So, sometimes we're born in a situation that is more favorable for material happiness. Sometimes we're born in a situation which is just suffering from the outset. I mean, suffering is always there, but intense suffering. And sometimes we're born in lower species. The person living in a big house and with lots of money today can be a dog tomorrow. That also happens, according to our activities. Just as in science, they say for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So on the karmic level also, we get the results of what we do. So the root cause of what is the root cause of all this? How do we get in this mess anyway? The root cause is ignorance. So Bhagavad Gita is to give us knowledge. Knowledge not of how to do anything particularly in this world, but how to live in this world so that we don't get born again. So that we come to a real spiritual position of actual pleasure, eternal happiness. Actually, the terms happiness and pleasure, they don't exactly mean the same thing, do they? Pleasure we generally think of as sensual pleasure. And happiness is a state of mind. Often we find that people who are rich, famous, good-looking, popular, they're actually not very happy. And often we find that, maybe not so much in this country, but definitely in India, we find many people who are not rich, not famous, not wealthy, and struggling in many ways, but are actually, their mindset is quite happy. In fact, starting from maybe 15 or 20 years ago, I believe the LSE, London School of Economics, was the first to do it. It was to do a world happiness survey to find which people in which country are the happiest, and they found number one was Bangladesh. So that should, in Bangladesh, I think they still don't have any McDonald's there. Maybe that's why they're so happy. I lived there for several years. And it's a fact, people, singing is a normal thing. People are just walking down the road singing happy songs. Music is very much, but they try to do some research. Why is that? Because everyone's always trying to do research into everything. So one thing they found out that people in Bangladesh are very religious, and I also found that. I mean, I must have spoken to thousands of people while I was there, and you don't find any atheists. It's just like it used to be in Ireland, that people, God, there's no question. Of course there's God. And also a stoic approach to life. That in a country in which there was, I first went there just a few years after the Bangladesh got its so-called independence from Pakistan, well, it used to be part of Pakistan. So they got it at the cost of a lot of lives, and pretty much everyone I met had a relative or friend or neighbor who had been killed. So that's one source of suffering, poverty and natural calamities. It's a disaster, it seems, but a stoic approach to life, that anyway, whatever will happen, will happen. We're not in control. There's God, He has a higher purpose, like this, not disturbed. Dukeshva nudvignamana sukheshu vigata spriha vitaraga bhaya krodha stita dhir muni ruchate. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that one who is not distressed even when there is cause for distress, and who doesn't become elated when there's a cause for happiness. In other words, somehow you get €1 million. Okay. Whereas others would be jumping up and down. And, all right, I got €1 million. They don't become elated. And who is free from attachment, vitaraga, but fear and anger, such a person is known as a sage of steady mind. So when did I got a bit off track here. I'm not a Shrutidhar. I can't remember what I was saying a few minutes ago.
You're talking about the world table of happiness.
The world table of happiness. Go back a bit. So I was making the point that there's suffering in this world. Everyone wants to be happy. Everyone tries to be happy. But distress is there for everyone. We can't avoid it. So we should come to that position, Gita points us towards that position where we can always be happy. So the first thing to understand is that we are spiritual beings. We don't belong to this world. Our nature is to be happy, but we don't belong in a place of distress. We're in this body temporarily. This body is not me. The body that we think is me is not me. It's temporarily. We'll discussion later. Please there'll be discussion later. It's only temporary. We're here for a short time. Very short. 50, 60, 70 years. Maybe 80 years. Maybe 90. Very short time. Then we have to go on to another body. And we came from another body previously. So we're going on. Body after body after body. But we are meant for eternal happiness. So Gita points us toward that. How did we get in this mess? Yeah, that's due to ignorance. That's due to ignorance of our constitutional position of happiness. Happiness means in spiritual existence. Spiritual existence means pure consciousness. Pure consciousness means freed from lust, greed, anger, envy, illusion, pride, and all other bad qualities, and to have pure love. And that love is not just some vague idea of some cosmic good feeling, but the object of love for everybody is Krishna, the Supreme Person, who is, actually we're saying that it can be expressed in any language, but every language has its certain meaning built into different words. So Krishna is represented in the English language by the word God, but it doesn't really fit, because Krishna is nice. He's not someone who takes pleasure in chucking people into hell eternally. Krishna's sweet, beautiful, kind, and loving. And love, I got off on this tangent with the pleasure happiness thing. So love means reciprocation of pleasurable activities. Love is built on that, pleasurable activities, but without the motive to enjoy personally by exploitation of others. This world is the world of exploitation. Everyone wants to be happy at the cost of everyone else. Or that you can't be happy in terms of physical happiness, sense enjoyment, sensual enjoyment, without exploiting anyone else. That's the nature of this world. We may wonder why certain countries in this world are very eager to intervene in the affairs of others in the Middle East. Well, one major reason for it, just in case anyone didn't work it out, is because there's a lot of oil over there, and oil is required to, we're not talking about cooking oil here, oil is required to keep our, what's called civilization, that's another misused word, keep our civilization running on, and that civilization is based on sense gratification. Sense gratification means we always want to touch something, taste something, feel something, doesn't feel very nice, hear something, see something that appeals to us. That's why we'll see people, they're always eating something, or chewing something, or smoking something, or drinking something. Tongue has to be titillated all the time. So the modern civilization, what's called civilization, is based on constant titillation. All the time the senses should be inspired, and then it comes to burnout. And then get some major inspiration by some intoxication. And then inside, disappointment, emptiness, nothing there. So this civilization runs on exploitation. In Gita, Krishna says in regard to this, just this one instruction, if anyone can understand, actually everything in Bhagavad Gita, if we can understand, will be so helpful for our life. Just this one thing, one verse I'm saying now. Yehi sangsparshaja bhoga dukkha yona evate adyantavanta kauntayana teshu ramate buddha. You heard that word dukkha again? So Krishna says, the enjoyment that comes from interacting the senses with the sense objects actually causes distress. Therefore, an intelligent person doesn't take part in that. Beginning, middle and end. We may think, well, there may be some distress, but I'm enjoying now. But actually in the contemplation of enjoyment, there's distress. Because we have to make some arrangement, get some money or whatever is required to do that. We're hoping. There's a lust is building up in our conscience. I want to enjoy this, I want to enjoy this. Then when we're actually so-called enjoying it, actually there's no real enjoyment. And afterward we have to suffer the consequences, either in this life or in future lives or both. For instance, if we seduce our next door neighbor's wife, we'll probably have to, we'll face consequences in this life also, and in future lives. So the few seconds of pleasure, which isn't really any great pleasure anyway, and then we have to suffer. So if we can understand this, that we're trying to get happiness through the senses, but it doesn't bring any happiness. Therefore an intelligent person doesn't take part in that. That will be great benefit for our lives. So, real happiness is with Krishna. That's the topmost understanding of spiritual knowledge. It begins with seeing our own situation. We're looking for happiness, we don't find it. Why is that? Because ignorance. Ignorance means that we think we're the body, and we think that we're the mind, and the mind through the body wants to enjoy interacting the senses with the sense objects, but it simply causes distress, and it causes repeated birth and death. So, to get free from this, we have to understand what is our spiritual situation. Our spiritual situation is with Krishna, in the spiritual world, living with Krishna, who is the supreme happy person. But that requires our understanding that Krishna is supreme and we are inferior. Oh, who wants to hear? If I tell you are inferior, if I say that to you, you might bop me in the face just to show me that I'm not inferior. Or you might sue me. Well, you are inferior, I'm also. We're all inferior. We're all tiny little beings. We don't know who we are, where we came from, where we're going. And in the meantime, up the dubs. We want to show we are great. Something about me want to show I'm better in some way than others. Or I've got something better to show than others. This is all foolishness. Ignorance. So, Bhagavad Gita teaches us to act on the platform of knowledge, of who we actually are. We're actually meant to be happy beings. We can't be happy by any material arrangement. Even if we have a very healthy body, we can do yoga to make our body healthy, but still it will have to die. Doing yoga for the health of the body, that's good for the body. But we are not the body. So, performing physical yoga, although it has some benefit, that benefit is only temporary. So the real benefit comes from first of all understanding who we are, what is our actual spiritual position, how to act in such a way that we don't get entangled in this material world, so we get extricated from it. So these are the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. You've enrolled in the Sanskrit course. But you don't have to know Sanskrit to understand these points. If you can understand Sanskrit, it does help to discuss the topics in a more technical kind of way, but the technicality is not the essence. The essence is the understanding. The understanding that I and everyone else, not only in human bodies, in every bodies, we're all ultimately spiritual living beings. We're all meant for eternal, blissful life. And we can get free from this cycle of birth and death and attain eternal, blissful life by acting in Krishna consciousness. Krishna conscious means to be conscious of Krishna, we all have our eternal relationship with Krishna. But not being conscious of Krishna, we try to focus our consciousness on what I can enjoy in this world, which simply traps us in this world. So that's a synopsis of what are the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, and what even many Sanskrit scholars, they miss it. They miss the point. They miss the wood for the trees. They get caught up in grammar and different complex, artificial, philosophical extrapolations, and they miss the whole point. The point is actually quite simple. I'll say it again, because even though it's simple, we tend to have jumbled up minds and we don't get it very easily. That I'm not the body. Body is temporary. I am eternal. I'm an eternal spiritual being. I have an eternal relationship with Krishna, who's the supreme spiritual being. I'm suffering in this world because I am ignorant of that. I can get free from that suffering by reviving my relationship with Krishna. So that is called Krishna consciousness. And reviving that relationship, that means engaging our senses in the service of Krishna. Just like instead of singing or listening to some music, we chant the names of Krishna. Instead of eating any old food, we eat food that is offered to Krishna. Instead of using our eyes to look at so many things in the world we can see, but we look at the form of Krishna. Instead of taking pleasure in decorating our body, we like to decorate the form of Krishna. So in this way, we become Krishna conscious. Our mind and our senses are focused on Krishna. And in this way we become purified from all mundane desires. And we become qualified to enter the spiritual world and live with Krishna eternally and happily. So that's a summary of all you could learn. Could take many lifetimes. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. After many lifetimes, someone who actually comes to the point of knowledge, they submit themselves to me, Krishna says. Oh, you can do it now? We've been many lifetimes in the process. Or we can just cut out. That's all. We don't have to go through many lifetimes. If we get the knowledge, we can take it and go with it and go to Krishna. If we don't, then, well, there are many forms of life. Dog, cat, tree, leprechaun. Is that one of them? You know, leprechauns in Dublin these days. At least no one's seen them. There are many forms of life. In Dublin also. There's a girl in Dublin who can see them. Okay. Alright. Well, there's no, even a leprechaun, they're within the material world, so. They're in the subterranean, that's it. You worked it out. They come from the subterranean regions. They pop up every now and then. Alright. So, don't become a leprechaun in your next life. Go to Krishna. Any question, comment, protest, or anything else? Speak now or forever hold thy peace. Forever. Many lifetimes. Yeah.
In terms of sense gratification, you can eat an ice cream and there's the taste and there's the faith.
Why do people eat ice cream in Ireland? It's always so cold here.
You've had a great summer.
You had a great summer. All right. Well, it's cold again now. Back to normal. I would think, I mean, I don't eat ice cream, but if I was in Maya, I'd probably prefer a hot coffee. I mean, I am in Maya, but not that bad. Yeah. Okay, all right. Ice cream. Okay, just for the sake of an example. There's an immediate pleasure.
Yeah, there's the immediate pleasure, and you have faith in experiencing something. Whereas, the idea that there's a future pleasure or happiness with Krishna is not something that you immediately experience.
You don't immediately experience pleasure.
No.
Whereas with an ice cream, you get immediate pleasure.
Yeah. So it requires...
This is animals' outlook. Immediate pleasure. Just like there's some experiment, you put the banana in a cage and the monkey holds it, and then he can't get his hand out because it's a fist, but he won't let go of the banana. How about that? Some psychological experiment. So even humans who are more intelligent, they put off their immediate pleasure for the hope of getting later pleasure. That's why people go to university, with the idea that if I put in 3 or 4 years here, I'll get a better job later. I'm not recommending that, I'm just using it as an example. Or even if someone goes to work, he could immediately, whatever money he's got, he could go out and buy a Guinness, if people still drink Guinness here. I don't know if they do, it doesn't really matter. He could immediately do that, but he has to go to work so that he can earn some money and buy some more Guinness or Heineken or whatever they drink. So, in human life there is that intelligence that we have to put off our enjoyment. We have to act in a way now that will give us a better situation in future. So if we think, well, let me just enjoy immediately whatever's to be enjoyed and to hell with the future, that's a very foolish outlook. That's what people are taking intoxication immediately. And people, by this your brain will be destroyed and you may become addicted. But foolish people, they don't think, oh, let me enjoy now, to hell with the future. That is a major topic of discussion in Bhagavad Gita, that the 3 modes of nature. So in the mode of ignorance, people, they don't care. Just whatever's now, let me enjoy. No thinking of the future. So we make so many plans for enjoying in the future, for making a better situation in the future by accepting some less enjoyable situation now. But then if we understand that I'm not the body, then we should be prepared to do whatever is necessary to get out of this whole syndrome of birth and death, which requires some austerity, means not engaging in materialistic sense enjoyment. Right? Otherwise the pigs, they're eating their slops. They feel quite happy. But that's foolish happiness. And they have to get slaughtered. So we may think, well, I'm eating an ice cream, but death is there. Death is waiting. That example is given in the Bhagavatam. Someone, he's being chased by a tiger. And then he's running and running, and he falls over a cliff. Or maybe it's an elephant. I can't remember what it is. Anyway, falls over a cliff, and he catches, there's a tree with its roots, which are just growing out, so through the earth, and he catches onto a root. So he's holding onto the root of the tree. And there's an elephant or a tiger. If he crawls up, the mad elephant or the tiger is going to attack him and kill him. And he looks below, and there's a poisonous snake looking up at him. Then he looks up and he sees there's a rat is gnawing the root. So anyway, he's going to fall. That's a pretty precarious situation, isn't it? Meanwhile, up in the tree, there's a beehive and some honey is dripping, and it just drips on his tongue. He puts out his tongue and thinks, oh, it's so nice, this honey. It tastes so good. That is our situation. Enjoying in this world. Or you're driving and there's a brick wall up ahead. And someone says, brick wall up ahead. Don't disturb me, I'm driving. It's very nice, comfortable, and there's air conditioning, or heater in this country. And there's, my favorite music is on, and it's wonderful. But you're driving towards a brick wall. Don't disturb me. I'm happy now. So that's our situation. We're enjoying in this world, but suffering is inevitable. Severe suffering is inevitable. But we think, let me enjoy now. Whereas some adjustment, put the brake on, don't slam into the wall. So this idea, let me enjoy now, whatever happens in future, is just gross foolishness. Yeah, anything else?
Yes, how to explain that to kids?
How to explain to children? You can tell them the same thing. They're often more intelligent than adults who've had more nonsense pumped into them. Every moment we're looking, seeing advertisements and relating with people who think that this material world is very nice and we can enjoy it. Kids are often, it's easier to explain to them. And tell them the same thing. The body is temporary. You have to die. This life is meant for God realization. You can tell them. But first you have to understand it yourself. Children learn not just by hearing, but by seeing also. So if you act in Krishna consciousness, then you can hope to begin to train your children. Although it is difficult with this grossly materialistic culture all around us. First you become convinced, then you can think of convincing others. You have to know also, because they'll ask questions. Children often ask very good questions, but they tell you, don't ask that. Or they're given some stupid answer like, someone ate an apple. It's amazing, the whole Western civilization developed on this extremely poor theology, which, even a child can understand that it really doesn't make any sense. That all the suffering in the world, all the poverty and cruelty and disease, because someone ate an apple. It's extremely poor theology. It doesn't even say an apple in the Bible, it just says some fruit.
People say that it's a metaphor for the soul's...
You can say it's a metaphor. I wasn't taught that. I wasn't taught it was a metaphor. I was taught because someone ate an apple. If you wake up and understand that it doesn't make any sense, you might try to metaphoricize it. But I wasn't taught that. I'm supposed to take it literally. I guess the silence means we're all numbed. Had enough for now. How to become convinced. Then you have to hear regularly. That is the first function of spiritual life, hearing. Hearing spiritual knowledge from people who know and are convinced themselves. And the second function is chanting. Shravanam Kirtanam. So we'll do that again. For someone. You want to lead? You're the very lively kirtan leader.
In the context you just mentioned, there is a little phrase, Guru bina gyan kahan se paun?
Guru bina gyan kahan se paun? Yeah, you need to get from Guru. So, yeah.
Without my Guru, where will I ever get the wisdom?
Yeah. So that's what I was saying. You have to hear from someone who is convinced. Is that Kabir? He speaks a lot about Guru. There are many famous Kabir sayings. So, Hare Krishna.